Hello and welcome to Tournament Poker Project. From Essex, I am Jon.
And I am Tain.
And we are two recreational poker players, and this is our learning journey to get good at poker so we can go and play in the World Series of poker. And not just play, but crush it, right?
Yeah.
That's the plan.
It's coming together. It's getting there.
It's getting there. We've been learning more about GTO and game theory and equilibrium, and yeah, we're coming along. It's, we're seeing some results as well. Tain, you had a couple of back-to-back live wins this week. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, not too bad. It's like I felt there was a couple of spots where I felt this was a game-changing spot. Not necessarily because it was a big win or a big decision or anything like that. It was I in one spot I yielded value that I just never would have yielded, and in another spot a player who's pretty good and he knows how I play and he knows what to expect, because I'd completely changed my game. He just completely missed a hand, and then my strategy of just leaving his bluffs in, just all of a sudden he's shoved against me and I've got the nut flush kind of. But he was like, oh God, I never even put you on the flush, because I'd never play in that position normally. But not only was I playing in the position, I was doing it for a real logical reason that fits in with my range, that fits in with my balance.
It's great.
That kind of thing.
That's great. And getting those, getting that bit of extra value in spots where we went before, surely that's what it's all about. We can get good and know when to play our usual game, but squeezing extra value out of spots, making us extra chips. So that can be the difference between a win and a lose.
Yeah. What step have you taken this week? Where do you feel I've learned that this week, and I'm putting it in my game, even if it's a tiny thing?
That's the sort of question I need to think about. I haven't played loads this week. I played since the last time we recorded last week. I did have a few MTTs that I've done well in a game. I don't think we've recorded one since I came fourth in that 350 runner $4 tournament, which was a really nice win. So I won $107. That was a nice jump. Trying to think if there's something I implemented there. Nothing that springs to mind. Just the confidence to continue playing in the way I know I should, even when you're getting down to that sort of final table, and then there's spots that you're not certain on, but well, for instance, he's got more bluffs in his range than he has value hands. I need to call this one, or it's close, but I'm pot committed. I need to call it, that kind of thing. So yeah, nothing that I've implemented in terms of into like specific learning, but definitely just continuing to increase in confidence as I play.
Fully.
What about yourself? What was one of your spots? Can you give an example of when you've got a bit of extra juice out of the pot?
Yeah, I mean, the hand that I specifically got the extra shove off was playing suited connectors. What was I? Was I in the small blind? I think I was in the small blind. No, I was in the big blind. And it was an under the gun raise, but it was just a min raise, folded round to a call-in station, who, for all intent and purposes, you can disregard from the hand. Like, they let you know when they've hit, so you just let them fluff the pot up. And then I was sitting in the big blind, and I would never call that out of position in the big blind, despite having half the bet already in the pot. I just wouldn't have ever done it. But I called it. But then when the flop came out quite low, two cards to the was it a backdoor flush? It was a backdoor flush. So one card to the flush, but I also had the straight. So I had a straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. But knowing that the under the gun person's overall range was stronger, I knew it weren't a time to put extra pressure. So things like I was doing smaller bets rather than trying to win the pot there and then. I was calling their raise, which either would have been a re-raise bluff or a call to try to bluff on the following street, but I didn't. It was just okay, that's still affordable. It weren't particularly strong raise, so I'm just going to call it. I'm going to see what the action is. I checked. They did a small bet, called it, and then it came in. And it's like, I would have, do you know when you're running the hand back for yourself, and it's like, what does he think I could have had in that position? And there's a lot of things that he would have put me on. He would have put me on things like a raggy ace. So, for instance, like if the board was, I can't remember what it was, but say it was 7-3-4, he's probably thinking the chances of him having the straights not very high, but he might have ace 7, he might have king 7. And then when it got down to the river and he'd hit his straight, but he just didn't even think about flushes that were there because of the way that I was calling. Like, I had multiple draws at that point, and I understood the impact on his range and put him on the certain hands that it was profitable for me to call, because I got, things like I'd got rid of most of my bluffs at that point. So he didn't work out that when he shoves on the end, that I've actually eliminated my hands down to something which is quite profitable. But I'd also put him on such a small range of hands that I knew that it was easy. It was an easy check fold if I'd have missed, and an easy call or reshove if I'd have hit. Just little bits like that.
Nice,
if that makes sense. It's just fully understanding what my range is doing and what his range is doing, and what the benefit of that is on certain boards.
Okay, that sounds really good. It sounds like the hand reading's really paying off there.
Yeah, yeah. If I could see the hand, I'd be able to articulate it a bit better. But it is that being able to work out, have they capped their range? Have I capped mine? Are we now playing 2 condensed ranges? What's the bet size in?
Wow, okay. Sounds deep. And are we going to talk about the elephant in the room, Tain?
Yeah, that's an AI generated. You can't see it at home, but that is an AI generated elephant playing poker, but you can't actually see it. You can't see any poker chips.
Tain's background is just like this giant elephant that's, I find myself staring at the elephant more than looking at you when you're talking, Tain.
Yeah, but another one for the people at home. Generally, when I'm doing these calls, these pods, I'm sitting in my daughter's old nursery, so I've got a giant Dumbo behind me, and where I sit, it tends to look like I've got giant Dumbo ears.
I'm glad you said that, because I actually thought you had some kind of condition that sometimes your ears would go really large and cartoon-like.
It's only when I'm lying.
They get bigger. Yeah, no, I'm glad you've clarified that, because that was quite, well, like all of the pods we've done so far, that's been quite concerning. I've just not wanted to talk about it. So thanks for clearing that up, Tain.
Well, I'm not clearing it up. It's still a disease that's riddens me every day of my life. But
okay, on that note, let's jump into a hand. Just for clarity, me and Tain are not professional poker players. We are relatively near the start of our journey to getting much better at poker, I hope. So as such, there will be things that we're talking about, some concepts that we don't quite know the ins and outs of, and we might get bits and pieces wrong, but we're generally kind of on the right path. And when we're talking, we're generally going to let you know if we're not entirely confident about something we're saying. So with that in mind, let's jump into this first hand. So this is a hand from a recent multi-table tournament that I played. We were down to, I think this was the final 3 tables, so we was already in the money. And being, I'm still playing quite low stakes, it didn't feel like I had any ICM pressure at this stage. I was still trying to, chip up and get a nice big chip stack in front of me. The blinds are at 2,500 for the small blind, 5,000 for the big blind, and there's an ante as well, which made the pot at this 8-handed table 12,500 before any voluntary money has gone in. We are sitting on the button. It folds all the way round to us and we're sitting there with King of Hearts, 2 of Diamonds. So just to let you know about the chip stack sizes with the people left in the hand, we have around 227,000. So our M value there is just under 20. And then the small blind has got 96,000. So they've got an M of somewhere like 7. And then 310,000 is the big blinds chip stack, so they're way over 20. Actions on us. So as I said, it's folded all the way around. What do we do here? Is this worth playing? Is this a fold? I mean, you can kind of guess that I didn't fold it because that'd be a boring hand to bring along. I folded pre-flop. That's the lot.
Yeah, done. Just if you remember, what stage of the tournament have you gone past the bubble? Is the bubble still miles off?
No, we're well in the cash. Yeah, no, we're well in the cash. So there's some pay jumps, but it was nothing significant. It was one of those you wanted to get to the final table, and then it really starts ramping up. So it felt like we were a way off. I think there was somewhere in the region of sort of 23 players left.
Sure. So yeah, being in the money, there's a slight leaning on you need to accumulate chips, but you're not trying to win all the chips just yet. It's kind of a survival, but you're slowly getting to a place where that survival's a bit more imminent. As the blind levels keep going up, you kind of need to keep staying above them.
Yeah, that's true. But we've got an M of not far off of 20. Well, we've got 18 or something. So I don't mind looking back at this. I don't mind a fold here. We don't have to play this. We're in no desperation to get chips. We've got the chip leader in the big blind. He might not appreciate us trying to steal a blind at this stage. Limping. Don't know. Is there an argument for limping? Should you limp on the button? You're in position. We've got a king. Everyone else has folded. Is this, should you get a few more chips in the pot? Then you've got some fold equity as well. What do you reckon?
I mean, I think solvers say that this is never a limp. Not necessarily, not just with this hand, but with any range that's playing in this place. Just because you want to minimise free bet opportunities, and limping means that chances you getting free bet is huge because you've given extra value to either of the blinds to raise. So not only have they already got some chips in the middle, so their range is wider because it's much more affordable, plus you're going to be raising them wider. The fact that you've only limped is such a small part of your range that it's easy to apply pressure. It's so much more profitable for them to free bet. You might as well just give up your chips, because what hands are you only calling with that you're then calling a free bet with? So yeah, for like calling this position is like a huge no-no. Okay. Even with aces, you're getting yourself into trouble, because if you then did call quite a big size free bet, they're all of a sudden saying, "Oh, okay."
When you say
what you're slow playing,
even with aces, it's a no-no. Are you talking about pocket aces or like an ace with a
pocket, like even just calling with pocket aces, because you want to build the pot as well. That's the other side of it. That if you want to be doing that with king two and also doing it with your pocket aces, so that it's not seen as, so they're so familiar with you betting in this position that it's profitable. So they'll bet, maybe the time that they do decide to free bet you because you've raised it, and therefore the time they do decide to free bet you is when you have got aces, because you're doing it with so much of your range. All of a sudden there's a good amount of chips going in, and then you've got position, and then you've got range advantage anyway.
So definitely no limping. Would you raise it? Would you if you was in this spot, would you raise it here? Would you open it up to maybe a min bet, or is it more of just throw this one away?
I'd be raising 100%. Pretty much any king, any king, any ace, most queens, I'd open.
All right. Well, we do opt to raise. So min click it to 10,000. The small blind folds, and the big blind completes, putting another 5,000 in.
Just to say, cool. I was just going to say that's something that I really want to learn a bit more to do, because I still default to like the 3 times big blind raise, and I've got to kind of look into.
Yeah, I think as you get shorter stacked, in relation to the blinds, like as everyone's M value sort of naturally starts going down a fair bit later in the tournament. My understanding is that you can get the same kind of fold equity with a min raise as with a 3 times the big blind bet, and also the pot's going to be building at quite a rate anyway, just by min clicking, as opposed to when you're early on, you've all got like 20, 30, 40 M. Yeah, you kind of want to build those pots a bit quicker with your decent hands.
Yeah, it's exactly that, and I need to give that a bit more consideration because, as you said, like if they're calling you, they're going to call you for 2 or 3 big blinds. So what are you achieved by increasing your risk?
Yeah, maybe so, and it might be that you get some more folds with 3 times the big blind, but we don't necessarily want folds in this situation. We've got a king, we're in position. It's not the worst hand ever.
No, cool. So
big blind completes. The pot is now at 27,500. We've got 217,000 behind. Big blind's got 305 behind. And the flop comes down 10 of clubs, 5 of hearts, 7 of hearts. So we've not really hit. We've got the backdoor hearts, the overcard with the king. The range, what are we thinking about? Whose range this has hit?
Yeah, you've definitely got the range advantage in this position.
Do you think? I think this is a big blind one, though. Like with the 5-7, I'm thinking.
The big blind's got the nuts advantage because they've got a few more of the straight draws, but they're only draws. Apart from the 5-7 as a 2 pair, I think 10-7 is in your range. 10-7 suited is definitely a raise of min raise from the button. He's also capped his range a little bit. The fact he didn't free bet, I think, gets rid of some of the most. Like, I can't understand why he wouldn't free bet with his aces, kings, and queens, for instance. So the fact that they're still in your range,
that then takes those out of his range, and actually does that not mean he's got more 5-7s and 10s in his range? So I would have to disagree with you on this one. I think for me, this is more the big blinds range.
He's got nuts advantage, but he hasn't got range advantage. He's got so many different hands in his range. If his calling range is 60%, 5, 10, 7 is a tiny part of that. So only one combo of hands. Well, sorry, 6 combos of hands is 5-7, offsuit. So that's not a consideration, right? Because if he's playing with 600 combos, you're talking, a pair of 10s is probably his nuts. But it's also your nuts. But you've also got all the over pairs at this point. The other thing to think of is that this is quite a dynamic board, whereby even though at the moment you're saying it kind of sits within the big blind a little bit better, they might be connecting to some of the straight draws a bit better. The chances are the turn and or river will change that. If the turn comes down like a king or a jack or an ace, you've got massive advantage, and it's switched. So him betting now and you calling opens the door to any change on that is something that you can push your advantage on. Does that make sense?
I like that. It's like dynamic. So he has got loads of 8-9s for an open-ended straight, Jack 9, Jack 8. He's probably got even like 6-4 suited in there. Yeah, okay, I get that.
But they're all draws at the moment. So the hands that he's hitting very strong on, sure, you might be worried about them, but as part of his overall range, there's just not enough of them. He shouldn't be betting too big because too much can happen on the turn and the river for him to be really building up a flop. So let's just imagine he's got the absolute nuts at the moment, which is just a pair of 10s. Another heart comes and that's put to pot. If he's playing 6-8 of hearts, so he's playing the straight and flush draw, if an ace comes and it's not a heart, that's put that to pot. You know what I mean? All of a sudden his draw is not worth much. So any value he might have at the moment might not be value if you call. So that's how I'm reading the board at the moment. I don't know if I'm reading the bet size right or wrong, if he should be betting big to maximize his value but maximize his bluffs. I don't think that's the case. You want to be doing that on a static board where you've either got a massive hand or you've got nothing. But we'll see. I'll be interested to see how they play it. If they check to you, my strategy would be.
So he does check. Villain does check here. So it's over to us in position here with the king of hearts and the 2 of diamonds and the board of 10 of clubs, 5 of hearts, 7 of hearts. So are we c-betting this flop?
Yes. But my reasoning isn't because you've got a particularly good hand, it's because you need to protect your range. Because a check in this position would get rid of tens, you get rid of all your sets, in my opinion. I don't know why you'd check behind with a set, even if, like, considering a small bet would build the pot, which is what you're after. It'd get rid of all your overpairs. And I think you need to protect that in this position so that if you get a favourable card on the turn, you've still got some gusto to lead with.
Okay. So when you say protect the range, are you just saying it keeps your range bigger? Like
Yeah, it uncaps it. It keeps it uncapped. Because as soon as your range is capped, he can start playing perfectly against you. Because he knows you've not got all the overcards. If another 7 comes, he can just he can just go all in because he knows the chances you have in that's almost none.
And that's what they say. That's what it means when they say protecting your range. All right then. So we do bet here, just a little under 1/3 of the pot. So we chuck 10,000 chips in the middle, and the big blind just flat calls.
And that's perfect. That's the one. Other than a fold, that is the next best outcome because you can, unless he comes out betting all guns firing on the next street, he's just completely condensed his range. So
it doesn't feel like he can have a 10 now. It even might be he might have a 7 or a 5 and he's got some showdown value, but this is kind of strengthening your first idea there that he's got some sort of draw, maybe the hearts or like some sort of straight, which would connect with his range quite a lot, given he's in the big blind and he just called. All right then, so I like that. So we've we've bet 10, big blind has just called, and the turn is the 5 of diamonds, so another 5 on the board. 10, 5, 7, 5, 2 hearts on the board. All right then, he checks and action's over to us again. Doesn't feel like he's got the 5 now, because if he did, he'd have trips and he'd probably be wanting to start getting some more chips in the pot, especially as there's 2 hearts out there. It doesn't feel like he's got a 5 in his hand. We've already decided he's unlikely to have a 10. He could still have the 7, and there are some 7s in his range, but we're kind of removing lots of his range now, leaving just your hands with a 7, holdings with a 7, or all of those straight draws are still in there, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that's it. When he's just check calling on the flop, and we're putting him on any potential draws of, so maybe the heart draw, something like, as you said, 6-8 for instance, or 8-9. Maybe I do think there is an outside chance it could be like a Duffy 10. So he's not going to be betting a 10-8, but it does also have a slight connection. There's backdoor straight that's in there as well, so he doesn't mind roping out and hanging on to that top pair just for a little bit longer, maybe trying to get to showdown. So I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that he's got that. The only hands at this point that he could have done that with, that he would still be doing that with, is ace 5. That's kind of it. Maybe king 5, but you do block the king a little bit. But ace 5 is probably the thing I'm scared of on this board. Any overcards gone, any sets gone, any 2 pairs gone. So right at the moment, it's a single card, and the rest of his range is all stuff that at the moment king high might be winning. I can't see him calling with any other ace in this position. I think ace 6 is too optimistic, unless he's playing to the ace flush draw, and that makes some sense. But you've got 1 and a hearts; it's just tiny little bit less likely. But you can read that. I mean, if a heart doesn't come on the last street, that's not a problem.
Okay, well look, with that in mind, he has checked to us. What would you do? Is this worth? Do we need to put more chips in here? Do we need to continue to represent? And bearing in mind this idea of protecting our range by not checking, basically, and keeping it a large range, do we continue with this story that we've got something here, some sort of overpair, maybe like ace 10, maybe even ace 5,
Yeah.
Do we continue down that route and make a bet?
This is the point now where the board's got a bit more. No, there's more to the board than there was on the previous street, where now someone can have a really made hand, even though we're pretty certain they haven't got it. We need to. They would also be scared of the same things we might be. So let's just say we've kept our range uncapped, so we could feasibly have a set of tens, set of sevens that have now just turned into a vote. Could have quads. We might still have aces, kings, queens as well, at which point they're still miles behind. So what would a bet in this position achieve? What hands are they calling with that we're beating?
Well, it's a good question, and maybe all of the straights that he might have had, which we felt there was a good few of in his range, maybe they'd start thinking it's not worth continuing, because they might feel like, well, even if I make the straight now, there's, full houses on the table.
Possibly. So if we feel that the king is a good enough bluff catcher, another small bet here would be good. If we feel that,
what do you mean? So bet because that's if
we do a small bet with the intention of him calling with his draws, and either
and then he bluffs the river.
Yeah, not necessarily if we bluff the river. Say he checks the river and we're too worried about a check raise, so we check behind. But we do that knowing that the king might be good enough anyway. Because if he was making that move with 6-8 and the 9 and the 4 don't come in or whatever, that we've beaten that hand anyway. And to be fair, there are a lot of his bluffs that we would beat. In fact, I say the king beats all of his bluffs at this stage. So maybe king as a bluff catcher is actually a great shout.
Okay.
But at the same time, do we want to get folds from better hands? And then that's the other side of it. So if he's got 9s and 8s, I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about them pairs anyway, but 9s and 8s I reckon could fold here. But I don't think something like ace-7 or, I don't know, 10-8, I just don't think it's going to fold. So bluffing in this position.
9s and 8s called the flop bet kind of stands to reason that they'd probably call a turn bet as well, just because of the bottom pair, the bottom card pairing on the board. There's not. We might have some 5s in range, like ace-5, like you say, even like king-5. Yeah, tricky one. I don't know then. What
in that position? I think they'd be losing to the hands that we've got in our range anyway, as well as if we possibly had that 5. Maybe playing ace-5. But the truth is, like, we've also got aces, kings, queens, jacks in our range. We've got 10s and 7s to have a full house. Like, that's always beating him anyway. So if they're going to call with a pair of 9s, that 5 didn't change anything. They were either always losing anyway, or they don't think you got that. So yeah, I think they would. So we're not calling for folds. We're not raising for folds in this position. It's more, do we want to cap our range with a check? Because I think if we check in this position, we do cap our range. So,
but it does feel like the pot's getting a bit big to continue. Like he's called and then he's called the flop bet and then he's checked the turn. It feels like he's got something, maybe a draw. It doesn't feel like he can have the 5s. I know you said about ace-5. I suppose he could.
I think it's too risky on the turn. On the flop, if it was a pair of 2 5s out there and he had ace-5, I can sort of feel why he might want to check raise. But to check the turn, knowing there's a chance you might check behind, considering your last bet was only a third pot, I don't know. I just can't see an ace-5 being checked on this flop, unless he really is this. I'm never going to bet into the aggressor kind of. Let the action out. I'm not feeling it. Like, I feel that even and because it's literally just ace-5, I think, possibly king-5, but it's such a small part of what he would be in this position with. I don't know. I mean, at the moment, I'm feeling
because it's so small part, you don't really want to worry about it. It's like it's too small a part of his range to worry about. So, all right then. Well, let's say then there's mainly draws or maybe a 7, pair of 7s. What do we do here then? Are we checking behind, or are we going to make a bet?
Yeah, like, even though I wanted to protect our range in the last, on the flop in the last street, at this point, I don't think it would matter because they've called the bet already.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that they will call, unless you're going to bet massive and hope for folds, at which point you might suddenly get unstuck when they were slow playing a hand. I don't feel that you need to protect your range so much at this point anyway, because they've shown that they're not worried about that. They called the flop bet. This is where I might be a bit wrong. My gut feeling here is that you've not connected with the board so much now that you should go for that. Yeah, you should basically pot control, go for the bluff catcher. They've shown that they've not got any strength by check, call, check. So let the river come out. If it completes the things that you think it might, you just let it go. And if it doesn't, bluff catch.
I do like that, but mainly because I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it and thinking, I actually don't know what we should do in this situation. I've found myself in it many times. I've c-bet the flop. I've had a call. He's then checked the turn. Don't know where I'm at. Don't really know what he's got. It doesn't feel like he's got anything too strong. I guess I'm in agreement here. Let's just check and see what happens on the river. We don't really want to get loads and loads of chips into the pot. We could try and take it down now with a bet, but we might end up just getting loads of chips into the pot. And if he's drawing as well, he might call a big bet here, thinking that we've maybe not got much of it either. Although we have, bet on every street so far, and this would be an extra barrel. All right, well, let's have a look. So we do check behind, and the river is an interesting card of the 2 of hearts. So the flush gets there, and we pick up a pair of 2s. So we've hit our 2. So we've now got bottom pair on a final board of 10, 5, 7, 5, 2. We've got the 2s and a king kicker, and there's the heart flush draw on the board. There was 2 hearts on the flop. Okay. Villain now schlumps in just under 20k. So coming up to half the pot. This seems like a big bet. Is my first thought. Like the flush has made it. We've thought he has got a lot of draws in his hand. It is a bit of a worry that he's now hit his flush and he's trying to get value. It's a good size bet. And, we are later in a tournament. You do get people that polarise their ranges a little bit more at this stage. And this does feel like a polarised bet. He had loads of draws, one of which could have been the hearts. And this bet size looks, it's not completely polarised. He's not gone massive. It's not like, I've either got the flush or absolutely naffle. It's a kind of good size bet to get me thinking about it. But maybe a bit risky. Considering the way it's played. If he's giving us any credit, he must know that we're kind of a bit suspicious of his hand having connected or completed, and that we might be, we might even bluff catch with a king or an ace at this stage with this size bet. I think if he'd have done a pot bet here, it would have been a much harder decision. But my gut is we're going to have to call this off. Maybe he's hit his flush. But he's also missed all of those straight draws. Yeah, he's still got a pair of 7s potentially. He's still got that ace 5, but he's got 6-8, he's got 8-9, he's got 8-jack, he's got 9-jack. He's got loads of combinations of missed straight draw. Way more than having a 7 or a couple of hearts in his range, surely.
Yeah, suited would play a big part in it. The only thing that I'm slightly thinking is that when you're playing to a straight and there is a flush draw out there that you don't have, there is a slight incline to bet your draw to deny equity, which he didn't do. Because the issue that he'd have there is that, say he was playing 6-8 of clubs, and then the 9 comes in, but it's a heart.
Yeah. He knows that some of his outs that complete his straight are actually hearts and complete a potential flush.
Yeah, bit of reverse implied. And he didn't do that. So if he is drawing, I'd say it's slightly weighted towards the flush draw. But I do agree that any draws that have missed at this point, his only option is to bet, especially given how low the board is. The fact that he's in the big blinds and most of his range is lower than Broadway. Well, not most of his range, but a massive part of his range is below Broadway. That he's got no bluff catcher. Like he's not playing anything that's winning. His only chance to win this pot is by risking as much as he feels that he can afford to lose. And half pot is that. But
I mean, he's got quite a lot behind. I mean, if this is a bluff because he's missed some sort of draw, then he could have gone bigger. I think if it was me and I was trying to represent the flush, I think I'd have gone like 120% of the pot and just whacked 60k in there with his chip stack, not with ours. He was he would still be, second or near or third in chips at the table. He'd still be in a good spot, and that would make sure the bluff gets through, I would say, if we've got king 2, for instance.
But yeah, I mean, if we think it through in that respect, like, wouldn't the GTO way to play in this position be you bet big with your bluffs because you want to get paid off with your nut flush draw in the same position? So a massive bet, so a massive bet on this street will get a lot more faults because you'd be more scared to call it, but would also get completely paid off when you think, I've seen you bluff in this position before, and then it turns over, something like ace-6 of hearts for the nuts, as well as a backdoor straight, which explains the way he's played a little earlier in the hand, possibly. So you'd have to imagine that if he was playing GTO, and again, this is me trying to understand it, I could be completely wrong here, that the half pot bet should only be done with the mediocre hands that he feels don't have adequate showdown value, which would mean a shove, not a shove. I don't think you'd risk that much, which means a call or a re-raise. No, a call, you've only got a bluff catcher.
You're talking about hero now, what hero should do.
Sorry, no, still talking about what the villain would be achieving. So they'd do that with their They do that with some of their missed draws, but that don't have show. So their best bluffs would also be bluff catchers, for instance. So their best bluffs in this position would be, an ace of hearts, perhaps. So they had backdoor, and also an ace-6, but they've not got 2 hearts. They've only got
I like ace of hearts. Like, although if he surely doesn't feel like he's blocking a nut flush, and that he would get us to fold a smaller flush with a half pot bet.
Well, so I'm
not sure the ace of hearts.
No, sorry, what I meant was the best of his bluffs, which would be something like the ace of hearts or combo draws that have missed. He'd save them for the big bluffs, the big value. So he's still got a bluff catcher with the ace of hearts. So he's still got he still had the best chance of representing. Does that make sense? He shouldn't be betting mediocre with them hands at this point, because they should be in his polarized range. They should be in the best of it or nothing. But he's also got bluff catch. Or he's also got bluffers. So even though he's bluffing, he's also blocking you having the flush. So you might as well bet big, because the chances of you calling big is much less, because the flush is out there and you can't have the best of it. Whereas the mediocre misses, the straight draws, for instance. So again, if he's playing 6-8, they're the ones that he saves for the small bluffs, where he's got more of them because they're mediocre, but you also can't risk that many chips. So
okay,
this
no, that
is
makes sense. So he's kind of blocking us because we opened on the button. We've got aces in our range, or we have. So if he had the ace of hearts, he's blocking that, which kind of blocks our chances of having a flush, which then makes it harder for us to call when he bets this on the river when there's three hearts out there. I think I get that. Yeah. Okay.
But what I'm saying is this bet that the villain has done here, which is half size pot, isn't the bet size that he would do with the ace of hearts, for instance. He shouldn't do that. Not saying he wouldn't, because this villain might have done that, but he should save them for the big bluffs, for the ones that are pot or even bigger than pot, because he's got much more chance of that getting through, as well as that's how he gets max value out of his best hands, when he's got the nut flush draw.
All right.
So the fact he's only bet half pot means that if he's playing GTO, which we assume he isn't, but if he was, that should be reserved for the weaker missed bluffs, whereby the only option of him winning his hand is to raise in this position. But he can't commit too many chips because his hand simply has no value beyond the bluff. So he does that with so this size bet's saved for things like, where he's got, I don't know, king seven, so he's got middle pair, it's got a bit of showdown value, but he also balances that with the missed 6-8 of clubs. Does that make sense? Where he's got no real value, so he doesn't want to commit too many chips, but he will win enough hands with the bluff that he'd also get paid off with the mediocre hands that get called with even worse hands, perhaps. I think that's Sarah's.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I definitely need to ponder that some more. Like, if it was me in Villain's situation, I had a 7 here for a pair of 7s. I think I'd be checking it and just trying to see what happens. Like, just see if it wins, and maybe call a small bet if the button then raises a bit and call it off.
Sure.
If I had a 7, I think that would be like a condensed range, which it feels like he's playing now because he's not been aggressive. He's called and then checked, so he's got a condensed range. And for me, if I had a condensed range and I had a 7 on this board, I would probably just be checking and trying to see if I've won or not.
Sure. So if we ignore GTO, or we at least ignore my bastardized brand of GTO, which could be completely wrong, I have to keep carrying that. I do agree with what you were saying earlier, that it's a good bet size, because if you had the flush, this might be where you pitch the most likely chance you've got of getting value for that. Because you check the last street, it makes it a little bit more true. If you'd have bet the last street and then they came out betting here, I'd consider that a bit donkey, and I'd say that that's actually much more likely that they've got nothing, because why would you not let you want to keep all the bluffs in your hand? You go on, try and win it now again. It's a bit of a risk, but by betting in this position, you've got to imagine that any of your misdraws are just going to fold. So they're either going for value or they're going for them folds. So
I mean, one thing's for sure is he's representing the flush. He probably knows he's looking like he's drawing to us, and one of the draws has got there, the heart flush draw's got there, so now he's representing it. So in a way, I kind of like the play. He's representing that he's made his flush. He knows he looks like he's been drawing. The third heart has come. Right, I've made my draw. I'm going to bet and try and get. And it's almost like the value bluff, isn't it? Because it's an amount that we kind of have to call. So then it's like, wow, okay, that is a good amount. It'd almost be easier to call a pot size bet for us because it looks more polarized, and then we'd be more sure that yes, he could have the flush, but it's also his other missed draws, his missed straights and whatever are in, and it would be a bit more like, oh, you know, an indifferent situation for us. Do we call with our bit of a bluff catcher too, or do we just fold because he's probably got it? So the fact that he's done this bet size starts to make it look like, well, he looks like he almost wants a call. He's gone just under half pot, and that kind of gives strength to the story that he's made his flush. So maybe it's a good bet, but with that in mind, maybe by making it look like I've made my flush, it's kind of reason to believe he's not made his flush, because why would he want to make it look like he's made his flush? He would want to make it look like he's not made his flush.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, one thing that appeals to me at this stage is looking at it from the perspective of your action across the streets, which was you min raised from the button when you were the first in. Then you've done a C bet, then you've done a check. So that kind of goes from you're doing that with most of your hands, then on the flop, standard C bet, which got called, and then on the turn, you've kind of said, okay, I haven't got anything.
Yeah.
That would give anyone the confidence to bet with a lot more of their bluffs. And I think that strategy, that thinking keeps enough bluffs in that this is a good call. That kind of weakness means that every one of their missed bluffs doesn't matter so much to them. Oh, okay, right. Yeah, didn't get my straight, but I'm gonna put some chips in here. You know what I mean? Or oh right, okay. I'm playing ace jack and I've completely missed this board. To be honest, don't even know why I called the flop. But he's shown he's weak. So this is the only chance I've got. Go on in, I'm gonna fire it off. Although
I like that thinking. Yeah.
Something like that. It just keeps
like
enough of these bluffs in it. Yeah, I've seen it enough times that when it goes check on the turn, whoever leads out on the next street feels like they should win. And that's because people aren't thinking about, what them streets of action have actually defined in their ranges. They're just seeing it as check means that you're both weak. Whoever then pulls their finger out and shows a bit of strength gets to take the pot in the next place and on the river.
Yeah,
especially
like
when it's I mean, it makes some flush. It does make flushes, but the 2 is also a little bricky for everything else. You know what I mean? It doesn't do an awful lot.
All of all the draws he had there, and we listed them all many times now. Some combinations of the flush. This feels like a call all day long now. Now that we're looking at it, it feels like, how can we not call this? He's got all those missed straights. We check the turn, the pair of us. Like, he's not got. I don't think he's got a 5. He could have a 7, which is probably my only real worry here, that he's got a 7. But like I say, if I had a 7 in this spot, I would be checking. I wouldn't be betting it like he's done. So I'm actually not overly worried about that either. We now don't need to worry about if he was just for some reason floating with 2 overcards, although would he have free bet with ace jack upwards? Probably. So I don't think he's got that either. He's either got the flush, in which case I'm paying him, or he's got 8-9. I'm going to go 8-9.
You only need him to be bluffing 1 in 4 times. You're getting 3-to-1 odds. So
that's it. And the amount of bluffs he's got here, this is so a call now, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so we see what Hero does. We make
shoves all in. No.
Thank God, because if this was another one that we got to the end of an hour's session and I folded and we don't know what he had, I think I'd have had to give myself a slap on the wrist.
Makes the call. And Hero call it is.
Jack 9 from the villain. So he'd had a gut shot straight. So on the flop he had 7, 9, 10 Jack. He was waiting for the 8. Nailed it, mate.
Yeah. I mean, from the villain's perspective, it was a terrible bluff because he's not blocking anything that you would be calling with. I mean, he's right to think that the only way he was winning the pot was by bluffing, but sometimes just give it up. When you've got so few blockers, like you'd be making these moves with ace 10, with ace 5, with ace 7. You'd be making this, you'd possibly be making the move with like 9s, 8s, like apart from if he's blocking 9s, but the whole top part of your range is still intact. You're beating him with any ace, any king, any queen. Like, at least try to cover what the other person would be like the crap things that the other person would be just calling with. But he's not doing anything. Like,
he's not. Yeah, he's messed this up. He's made it too enticing to call. Like, maybe we'd have still called a pot size bet, but that would have been much harder. If he'd have bet like a really like 130% of the pot or something there, when that half draw completed, I might have had to just fold it. You know, I think we might have had to fold it.
And that would be the polarized part of it. When someone bets that big raise, pot or more, they're saying to you, okay, this could be complete air, but it's also pot. How much of that risk are you going to take? Especially if
you want to put a quarter of your remaining stacking to find out, that would have been a hard decision. He didn't really give us his mistake here. The villain's mistake is he didn't give us a hard decision. Really, it was a bit of an easy call, and I know we made sure that we were logical in our thinking, and it took us a while to say, yeah, we definitely need to call this, but he could have made that a lot harder for us, and he could have got a bluff through had he have done decent bet size.
Yeah. So just to summarise street by street, if we're agreeing with both our reasoning of the hero's action and the route that we took. So the bet on the pre-flop from the button when you were the first in, I think was good. I can't see any other way that you'd play that. I don't think the bet size was bad in any way.
No.
The C bet, I was thinking about third pot. So you've got king of hearts, 2 of diamonds, and you completely missed the flop. What is that? 10 of clubs, 5 of hearts, 7 of hearts. And you've C bet and you've just got a call. So both from not free betting and then just calling from not free betting the pre-flop and then just calling the flop. The villain's already starting to cap their range just down to draws. 5 of diamonds comes. Check from the villain, so he's completely capping their range, condensing it as well. To us, and I do think there's very little value. Are we still agreeing there's no value in betting at that point then on the turn? Your hand is now becoming a bit too far away from the board for your bluffs to be
more
decent.
I think more that on the turn for me, the check was probably right because we just didn't want to inflate this pot anymore. Like, I think you said it right when you said he's called the flop, he's going to call the turn. Like, if he's drawing, he's going to carry on going for it, unless we went massive and jammed or something, which would just be crazy, really, because he could have checked the turn with a 5 potentially, and then he would have just got all our chip size. It felt like just check it down, see what happens on the river, and then let him bluff it with his misdraws, which is exactly what we did. It feels like I don't hate a raise from us on the turn.
No,
but, I mean, for me, when the middle or bottom when the middle or bottom card on the flop then pairs on the turn, that is usually all over the big blinds range, and they hit that way more than we do generally. Especially with a C bet, like if we'd hit a 5 or 7 on the flop, we might have considered just seeing if we get to the river and see, we've got some showdown value and just condense our range and it might win a lot of the time. So yeah, I think this was played right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about the same point on the turn where you're saying you don't want to build the pot, and my reasoning would be for the same thing, but because your hand doesn't really have any opportunity to improve anymore. So the hands that the villain was drawing to might already be beating you, even if you hit your king. Does that make sense? So
Fine.
you can't keep putting chips in the pot when the turn weren't favourable. There's almost nothing that can come. Or even if the king did win the hand, you're playing to 3 cards on the river. You really can't afford to keep putting chips in there or giving him the opportunity to free bet. Sorry, not free bet, to raise you. So that's just pot control. And I think that is we're talking exactly the same point. I'm just thinking of it from the terms of why our bluffs are no longer strong anymore.
On the turn, what are we? If we were to bet again, what are we really representing on the turn? What we've got 5.
I'd say an overpair at that point wouldn't be the worst chat, but
if we had an overpair on the turn, like if we had an overpair, like say we had a pair of kings, or for argument's sake, and the turn came the 5, which is well within the big blind's range, the pair of kings suddenly loses its value. Suddenly we're like, oh, this might not be the best hand now. Like there's a good chance villain in the big blind there has got a 5. You know, he called the flop, so he's got a lot of 5s and 7s in his range. Our kings are now not definitely the best hand. They're not that premium anymore. We're suddenly, pair of kings, pair of aces even, are maybe just looking to show down, I would say, on the turn. And that tells us to check all day long.
Yeah, well, the other side is that, let's say you're playing your overpair on the turn. If you bet and the villain calls, I was just quickly running through what cards would be good on the river. Any heart would be terrible. Any 2, any 3, any 4, any 5, any 6, any 7, any 8, any 9, any 10, any jack. Maybe not any queen would be too bad for your range. At that point, all of them cards, any, including every heart beyond that, would be the only person that's calling you is someone who's got a massive hand already, or someone who's drawing to the massive hand, and all of them cards would make straights or flushes, so they can bet with impunity, knowing that even if you've limited your range to either the absolute nuts and okay, they're betting into you with and they're going to lose, or more likely they're betting into you and you've got a pair of kings, and well, there were so many draws out there that they can now represent that you've got to fold. So you were raising the pot just for them to call. Yeah. So if the hero raised on the turn and you were called, if the big blind was a thinking player, they might realise that you're not raising that position with many draws, you're with many weaker, mediocre hands, because they'd want to get to showdown. You probably wouldn't be doing that with your draws, because you might as well wait and see if the draw comes through. So, especially if you're because you've got position and because you were the first in, you should have the stronger, higher part of the range. Your range should be more skewed, and you're uncapped at this point, so you're still more inclined to go to showdown. So they could just represent any draw, knowing that the chances you getting for a draw are very small, and the chances of you playing something which is now very beatable, there's 3/4 of the deck of cards that you're gonna have to fold to, or be in a really tough spot with. So they've got you covered as well. So just shove. I mean, I think that I might be missing something, or it might be too.
No, I think you're on the right lines.
Too tough.
And imagine if we had bet the turn, right? Let's just go back to the turn a minute. Just look at this a minute. So on the turn, there was 47,000 in the pot. So our SPR at this stage is about 4.5, right? So if we were to make a bet here to try and get him off it, we'd need to be betting 3/4 of the pot. We'd need to put in like 35,000 chips. If he then called that, there would be about 120,000 in the pot, and we would have a pot and a half size bet left. It would be his bluff on the river, if we had bet the turn, would be a jam. And then we would have kind of set him up to give him a much easier, he'd be able to make the right size bluff without thinking about it too much, because he'd know he'd have to jam to get us off. So I suppose we've made it easier for ourselves by not betting the turn, keeping the pot smaller. Then he's making an incorrect bet size that was easy for us to call. Whereas if we called the turn, we'd have had a pot and a half left in our stack on the river. He would have probably known then to jam. Or even if he'd have just done a half a pot at that point, it would have been 60,000, and we'd have, it would have been just harder all round. It would have been a bigger pot. The bluff would have been bigger. It would have made the decision much harder for us on the river to bluff catch with our pair of twos.
Yeah.
Pot control. I think that's we've not got anything, but let's see what happens on the river, and then we was easily able to bluff catch.
Yeah.
Just by 100%. Keeping the pot that bit smaller. All right. Any final thoughts, Tain, before we wrap up?
No, there's a couple of spots in there that I do need to go and make a concerted effort to kind of work out why I'd be doing that, why I haven't been doing it. It's simple little things like min raises and working out what the point would be for me to raise any bigger and how often I'm raising bigger just to represent the strength of my hands, which is not a good way of playing. Just little bits like that. But also, as I said, I might actually save this and have another look at what happens when you do bet that turn. Even though we're never betting the turn, we were both really comfy that that's the wrong move. I do want to just go through the strategy on if you bet that turn, is range versus range means that they can call that bet and then bet with absolute impunity no matter what card comes out. Well, anything lower than a queen comes out on the river to put you in a position where you almost can't call. At which point, is there something we can learn about that is replicable? Like, is this situation coming up where someone does double barrel and it's so easy to read their double barrel that the only thing that they'd be double barreling is with either complete bluffs, which they're not going to call that jam, or over pairs, for instance, at which point they're not going to call that jam. So you just hit them hard. So it could be some serious profit. But I might be wrong. I might be missing something. I might be missing a few combos that the hero could have in this position that a jam on the river is getting called. It would be for your tournament life. But anyway, it's just that. But it's been a fun hand.
It would have definitely. Either way, either way, it would have been a really tough spot. If we'd have bet the turn, inflated the pot, then made it easier for villain to jam, it would have just, whatever odds there might have been, it would have been much, much harder to call that jam with our crappy little pair of twos. Our bluff catcher.
How mad do you reckon the villain was?
I think he was probably a bit annoyed, but he did bet that only, just under half pot on the river, so he probably wasn't that annoyed. He's still got like 295,000 chips. He's probably like, damn, I bet not mess around with this geezer because he's just cool with his pair of twos. Like he's probably put a note on that we're at least a semi thinking player.
Yeah, I do sometimes wonder if people. It's probably both, actually. It's probably some people give you the respect that you're due, and there's definitely been a time in my game where I've just been, how can you call me with twos? Can't believe you don't respect my raises. That kind of craziness. That's actually.
Well, the good thing is there'll be people at the table thinking, great, next time I get a pair of sevens, this guy's going to call me with a pair of twos. So that it worked. At this stakes, it does work well in a lot of ways, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. They don't pay attention to what you said earlier. A pair of sevens wouldn't bet in this way. A pair of sevens got showdown. We know you've got a seven. I
think it looks cool. I think it looks cool, man. I love cool. No, it's not a hero call, but it's it's on its way to being a decent call. That's more of a marginal situation that required a lot of thinking about all of the streets to make a good call.
Yeah, no, nice. Quality.
All right. Well, always a pleasure, Tain, and thanks to our listeners for listening. We hope you're enjoying our pod so far, and that you're coming along on this journey with us. See you in Vegas.
Subscribe. Stick with us.
Stick with us. All right. Till next time.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.
Take care.